Camilla simply commanded the salute of Britain's finest troops when standing in front of the whole Grenadier Guard at Buckingham Palace. To be honest, the entire event was intended to resemble the ultimate victory lap. However, when you look closely at what was going on beneath that flawlessly staged ceremony, you're actually witnessing someone standing on a trapdoor and making a concerted effort not to look down. This is the issue with the picture that was released from Buckingham Palace on June 9, 2026. As the Chaplain General consecrates the new colours, Queen Camilla, dressed in an exquisitely crafted regimental uniform, watches these infantrymen lower their heads before the drum altar while wearing the ancient Grenadier Guards brooch that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth II. This type of setting is meant to exude unwavering, enduring strength. The regiment is the most senior foot regiment in the entire household division, and she is currently its colonel. In 2022, Queen Elizabeth deprived Prince Andrew of this position. On paper, this represents Camilla reaching the pinnacle of a 50-year journey. The unwelcome outsider, the shadowy figure lurking in the background of the Windsor family portraits, the lady who was once the most reviled person in British tabloids, is now commanding the unwavering salute of Britain's best troops. This is where things get strange, though, because the more you consider what this event truly stands for instead of what it is meant to convey, the more it begins to resemble the antithesis of victory. It appears to be a very formal, costly panic attack. Furthermore, I believe that not enough people are discussing why the timing of this is so crucial. Since Camilla's gains aren't the source of the tension in this case, let's properly examine what's going on mentally. It stems from the knowledge that she is going to lose. This is the fundamental paradox that makes the entire situation so intriguing. Camilla has accomplished all that was said to be unattainable: the title, the crown, the castle, the military decorations, the legitimacy of the Constitution, everything. The coronation in 2023 was made possible by the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee Declaration, and she is currently the highest-ranking woman in the realm, standing in front of the Grenadier Guards. That's the official narrative. That's the version from the press release. However, Camilla's current lived reality is that she is ruling on borrowed time in a monarchy that is already moving away from her. She is aware of it. Everybody in that palace is aware of it. Her current level of power is not the question. How quickly that power vanishes when conditions shift is the question. And things will undoubtedly change. This is what makes Camilla's position so intriguing to me, and I believe it's the reason why people find it impossible to turn away from her, even when they try to. She is not acting in a legacy-building manner. She's acting as though she's guarding a makeshift stronghold. There's a distinction. A builder thinks in terms of decades. A defender is considering what would happen if something went wrong on Tuesday of next week, and you can see the anxiousness when you look at her public appearances from that perspective. It's in the accuracy, it's in the inability to unwind. Because there isn't a cushion underneath her in case she trips, every single ceremonial moment must be perfect. Now let's discuss why there isn't a cushion. Because this delves into an aspect of the British monarchy that is truly rather harsh. Within that institution, power is derived from two very different currencies. One is constitutional legitimacy, which includes titles, functions, military appointments, and legal standing. Charles has made sure Camilla has plenty of that. He's given her everything. Public adulation is the alternative currency. And this is the one that she has been hopelessly unable to obtain for decades. Camilla has been embraced by the public. They've put up with her, they have come to terms with the fact that she is now the Queen. And that's the reality. However, they have never given her an emotional hug. Diana, not the way they did it. Catherine, not the way they do. The acceptance is icy, it is transactional. It is not motivated by actual affection for her, but rather by respect for Charles. The fact that Camilla has no long-term political capital makes that distinction crucial. She cannot afford to make even one mistake. A public relations catastrophe is beyond her means. There's no public goodwill to fall back on when things get tough, so she can't afford even a moment of perceived weakness. Everyone involved in controlling her authority is aware of how brittle it is, since it is a highly controlled illusion. It would be dangerous enough if that were the entire tale. However, the generational maths is what really makes this scenario difficult, and I believe it bothers her in private. Because Camilla, who was in her mid-70s, succeeded a king who was in his mid-70s. Unlike the 7 decades of Queen Elizabeth's reign, this was never going to be a vast age. It was always going to be a bridge, a chapter of change. Camilla is also aware that her entire career depends on a single man's heartbeat. Her institutional armor disappears the instant mortality breaks that tie, not gradually, not immediately, not after a period of peaceful transition. She loses her active constitutional role, her command over elite military units like the Grenadier Guards, and her pivotal position on the international scene when she is crowned Dagger Queen instead of reigning queen. In June 2026, everything for which she stood and accepted the salute has vanished. And I believe it's the aspect of these ceremonial images that people fail to recognize. The knowledge that this is transient, unlike Elizabeth's reign, casts a shadow over each and every one of them. Elizabeth had time to integrate herself into the world's consciousness. Camilla is aware that time is of the essence and has a tight window. Every slight health issue with Charles, every obvious symptom of exhaustion, and every rumor that the king is slowing down all point to a possible abrupt end to her golden age. That isn't paranoia. That is simply an accurate interpretation of the organization's operations. To be honest, though, the biological clock isn't even the most fascinating aspect of this whole scenario. The other clock is that, whether Camilla wants it or not, the generational change and popularity clock are taking place. William and Catherine pose an existential threat to everything Camilla has worked for decades to secure, which is where the House of Wales enters the picture, not in a conspiratorial sense, mind you. Nobody seems to be actively planning anything, in my opinion. It's nearly worse. She is not in danger of being undermined by William and Catherine. The danger is that they won't need to take any action at all. Their natural connection to the public, their seamless star power, and their very existence, all of this inevitably detracts from the current Queen's relevance and attention. When you put it out, the difference between Camilla and Catherine in particular is really harsh. It required decades of cautious maneuvering to reach even the most basic level of public acceptance during Camilla's arduous defensive fight to the throne. She had to endure being called Britain's most despised lady. She was forced to accept the clear compromise that she would only ever be referred to as Princess Consort, a term created especially to appease a distraught and angry public. Then, using institutional alignment and quiet perseverance, she had to spend years methodically destroying that compromise. It was a campaign fought with unwavering obedience to the Crown's requests, complete discretion, and steadfast devotion to duty. Because of her unwavering perseverance, Queen Elizabeth and the general public granted her grudging tolerance. That's how she arrived. In contrast, Catherine was already well liked when she joined the royal family, and over the years she has worked to project an image of immaculate modern perfection that is adored all around the world. Ancient military titles and complex state rights are not necessary for Catherine to establish her legitimacy when she enters the public light. She has inherent power. It is produced by a genuine emotional connection with the general audience. Therefore, when both ladies attend events, the Princess of Wales is inevitably the focus of the global media story. On her own stage, Camilla is reduced to a supporting role. Not because there is a plot, not because anyone is being unjust, but simply because the public finds Catherine more appealing. And Camilla is astute enough to see that this causes what I would refer to as an eraser's worry. Camilla is well aware that the media narrative will change as soon as Catherine fully recovers and re-enters the public eye, which she has been doing gradually. Every time the Prince and Princess of Wales appear, the careful, hard-won accomplishments of the King and Queen become insignificant. It's not that Camilla fears Catherine will deliberately undermine her. It's that Camilla's arduous legacy will be rendered entirely meaningless by Catherine's effortless perfection. Between the famous periods of Diana and Catherine, she will be reduced to a minor historical footnote. And to be honest, that's probably exactly what will occur. The fact that William isn't merely waiting in the wings complicates matters further. He is a forward-thinking prince who has distinct ideas about what a contemporary, streamlined monarchy ought to look like. Additionally, Camilla needs to be conscious of the possibility that William's plans for the House of Windsor's future do not include a prominent position for her or her extended family, the Parker BS branch. Charles has exerted every effort to elevate his wife and integrate her family into the background of royal life. However, William's promotion will result in an entirely different set of priorities. The institutional security Camilla enjoys vanishes the moment William ascends to the throne, which may happen at any time given Charles's age and health. The power dynamic completely swings into the hands of a man who is aware of the traumatic past of his mother, Princess Diana. I'm not suggesting that William is plotting retaliation or harboring resentment. That's not how he works, in my opinion. However, I am arguing that his vision for the monarchy would inevitably prioritize his wife and children over his father's bride and her family. That isn't cruelty. Succession simply operates in this manner. However, knowing that her status will be gradually diminished the instant her husband is no longer king must be a persistent source of anxiety for Camilla, who battled for 50 years to get access to the inner circle. Every ceremony she oversees is a fleeting privilege that she is aware will come to an end. Beyond William and Catherine, there is another layer. This is the aspect that, in my opinion, receives insufficient attention. The younger generation, the royal family tree's pure branches. Such like the Earl of Wessex, James Alexander, formerly Viscount Sever. James, the son of Prince Edward and Sophie and the youngest grandson of Queen Elizabeth, stands for something Camilla just cannot match. A spotless, unblemished reputation that was purposefully cultivated outside of the poisonous media limelight by parents who valued a scandal-free, grounded childhood. He has no baggage as he steps onto the royal stage. It is impossible to overlook this difference, which highlights Camilla's authority's basic limitations. Today, she can command the Grenadier Guards to salute her. She can hold the position of a monarchical titan, but her own biological children from the Parker BS line cannot inherit any of that status. William, Catherine's offspring, James Alexander, and the remaining younger generation are the ones who will inherit the future. Without any of the poisonous historical baggage that characterizes Camilla's biography, they possess the desired Windsor bloodline. The public's and the media's desire for a modernized, streamlined monarchy is driving up demand for new, scandal-free faces. Camilla is reminded coldly that these younger royals are the owners of the future, and she is a keeper of the past by every bit of praise they receive. And her entire queenship is defined by that absurdity. She has accomplished all that was said to be impossible for her. She overcame an organization that had previously attempted to keep her out. Most people would have been crushed by the wall of public animosity she burst through. She obtained the most prestigious title a consort could have. Accepting the formal salutes of the realm, she stands in front of the Grenadier Guards with fitted elegance and Queen Elizabeth's own brooch. It ought to be the last confirmation. And it is, in a way. However, security and vindication are two different things. The exact system she overthrew is meant to outlive her. As soon as she leaves the stage, the very generation that has been waiting in the wings is ready to undermine her power. She battled a lifetime to share the throne, but it is not a permanent haven. It's a short-lived, much-watched pedestal. Additionally, William, Catherine's and the younger generation's shadows are getting longer every day. This, in my opinion, explains why the public is unable to turn away from Camilla, even if they so choose. The most timeless aspects of royal drama are embodied in her story. The extreme fragility of position, the cost of survival, and the quest for power. Beneath the meticulously manicured facade of a self-assured queen, a woman is racing against biological time and generational shifts. Her strength is not sustainable. It is a borrowed asset that is totally reliant on King Charles's survival. She acts with a keen understanding that she is the guardian of a period of transition, a short-lived link between Elizabeth's enormous legacy and William and Catherine's era's eventual domination. The state's shield will disappear the instant that bridge reaches its natural conclusion. Currently, the politicians and courtiers who submit to her authority do so out of deference to the current queen, rather than a sense of personal allegiance. Her institutional barrier falls apart in the absence of Charles, exposing her to a society that will never completely forget or forgive the tumultuous past of her rise. When her main defender is no longer present to uphold her hard-won legacy, what will be left? The idea of being banished to the quiet, helpless periphery of the royal court must be quite horrifying for a lady who put up with decades of public persecution in order to maintain her position by Charles's side. Here's the issue with the Grenadier Guard ceremony in particular. It was supposed to be the ultimate visual evidence of Camilla's arrival, a spectacular proclamation of her superior status. However, the ceremony begins to appear less like a proclamation of permanence and more like an expensive attempt to firmly establish herself in the state's fabric, so that she cannot be easily erased when the transition takes place, when you comprehend the context and the invisible pressures that are pressing in from all sides. Because the future is so unknown, it's a tactic, a deliberate attempt to achieve swift, visible successes that bolster her credibility in the here and now. However, that approach is inherently risky and draining. A woman in her 80s must be flawless in order to operate under the constant scrutiny of a worldwide media apparatus that is on the lookout for any indications of weakness or decline. Every appearance must be perfect. There is no reservoir of public goodwill to cushion a fall, so every ceremonial occasion must be carried out flawlessly. If something goes wrong, there is no source of love. Camilla is accepted by the public on a logical rather than an emotional level. It is not unconditional, it is conditional. Additionally, conditional approval is reversible at any moment. That is the harsh workings of power under the contemporary monarchy. The best defense against political irrelevance is public affection. Camilla is extremely susceptible to the fluctuating winds of royal popularity because she only has the formal machinery of authority and lacks the people's emotional loyalty. Because they understand that her victory is a brittle fiction, the world's audience keeps a careful eye on her. She has ascended the mountain and taken control of the stronghold, but as she stands on the top by herself, she is acutely aware that a new age is beginning to take shape beneath her feet. The ultimate tragedy of Camilla's situation is, in my opinion, the unavoidable reality of her history tale, which is why her current concern has such a strong hold on the public's imagination. She put up with unheard-of public disdain for decades in order to be with a man she loved. Over time, she orchestrated an institutional rise that led to the crown. It truly is among the most amazing survival tales in contemporary royal history. However, she encounters her most terrifying realization so far as she stands in front of the Grenadier Guards in 2026, enjoying the official state salutes. The exact system she overthrew is meant to outlive her. As soon as she leaves the stage, the very generation that has been waiting in the wings is ready to undermine her power. Her current dominance is an oddity in history, a fleeting moment in the story of Windsor. The court will quickly adjust to the new monarch and the pure generation after Charles abdicates. William's vision will come first. The star power of Catherine will be paramount. Camilla will have to face the fact that her decades of survival and struggle were ultimately spent attaining a temporary peak from which she must surely plummet, while the younger royals, with their fresh starts and direct bloodlines, will take up their natural positions. The ultimate visual depiction of her reign will be the Grenadier Guards ceremonial in June 2026. An unavoidable undercurrent of political and personal vulnerability overshadowed a time of extreme institutional validation. The greatest degree of systematic vindication was offered by the official salutes of Britain's finest warriors. However, the spectacular event was unable to dispel the deep fears that characterize her everyday existence as the last notes of the military brass drifted across Buckingham Palace's lawns. She is a queen in a transitional monarchy, governing on borrowed time and confronted with an impending generational eclipse that she is powerless to prevent. Her current level of power is not the question. How does she deal with the realization that the irresistible,